When you're creating loadout definitions, there's two types of loadout definitions that you can create. They're based on the number of units that you include in your loadout definition when you export it or save it. I think the magic number is 9 right now. And if you have 9 or less units in your loadout definition, that's considered a squad loadout definition. Anything more than that is called a full loadout definition. Why did we pick 9? It seemed like a good number. So a squad unit definition is meant to define a certain team that you might use, a configuration of units you might use. And you might ask, well, why is it 9? Why isn't it just 5? And that's because we offered the ability to make certain units optional or not. So if you're creating an Imperial Troopers team, you might have 3 units that are always part of that team, and then 3 units where you can pick 2 of them optionally. Let's take a look at those in the game right here. So if I go into the application and I filter by Imperial Troopers, I can mark units as optional. Let's say I always want Piet, Dark Trooper, and Veers. What I would actually do is I would remove all units because I'm only creating a loadout definition for Imperial Troopers. And then I would do something like add visible. And then if I see all my units, right, and I uncheck the include, you'll see that only Imperial Troopers are included. And then let's say I want my Imperial Troopers to have these units right here. I want my Piet, my Dark Trooper, and my Veers and my Stark always to be required. And then I want the user to choose one of these 4 units. I can go ahead and click this here. I would go into Advanced for Range Trooper. I would go under Requirements, and then I'd say Unit is not required. When we get into the importing of loadout definitions, there's some options and visual cues that show to the user for units that are optional. But I'll go ahead and put this for these 4 units, and then when I save this loadout definition, it will remember that they are optional units. The rest are required. So we should have a pretty decent understanding now of how to create a loadout definition, how to set a unit's stat weights, their primary restrictions, their set restrictions, and their stat restrictions. And that information is very useful in the editor to help us identify when units aren't hitting their restrictions. It's also going to play into the automation very critically. But all of that information is not specific to your roster. It's kind of general metadata on how to mod units. And that information can be shared with other people. And one of the features that we've built into HotUtils is we've made it very easy to export those loadout definitions so that you can pull those loadout definitions into new loadouts you're creating later, or you can share those loadouts with friends or guildmates. So let's talk about how to do that. I'm in here in the screen. Let's say I've set up a bunch of stat weights, I've set up my restrictions, I've spent a few hours doing a bunch of units, and I want to share it with my guildmates. I'd click on the template tab right here, and I'd go to export loadout definition. I can select create or replace. If I select replace, then I get a drop down list, and I select the loadout I want to replace. If I want to create a loadout definition, I'll go here, I'll call this demo, I can give it a category. You can select the categories you want to. The categories that you select will play into which categories appear in the modding wizard, which is a easy to use kind of like a step-by-step guide on how to mod your unit. So I would suggest that you spend a little time and select the correct category for your unit. So let's say this is a full roster remod. For 5v5, I'd select that. I'll give a quick description. let's just say full baseline, and I could give a YouTube ID here. So this is not a full link to YouTube, it's the YouTube ID afterwards. So if you had a video on how to run a squad or a loadout or something that you wanted to include in your loadout definition, you can put that right here. And then you can also share this with either guilds or alliances. So if I select this drop down right here, the guild that I'm in, I can go ahead and click that. It will share it with this guild. I can also share it with an alliance that I'm in by selecting here. I can also select to share it with allies. And I can type ally codes in here and click add ally, and then the ally will appear down here. It also allows you to select whether you want to use all the characters in the loadout or not, and then when you're done, you go ahead and click export. This public button is only available to users that have the content creator tag. We don't want the global table of loadout definitions to be too big, so we're limiting it to a smaller subset of people right now. Let's say that you're always sharing it with a certain number of guilds and alliances, and you're getting tired of adding those ally codes every single time you do an export. Once you have it configured for the people that you want to share it for one time, you can click Save as Default. That will become your default sharing settings. And then the next time you want to export a loadout definition, you can just come in here and click Load Defaults, and that will pre-populate your guilds, alliance, and allies that you want to share it with. Once you share those loadout definitions, they'll appear in the Import Loadout Definitions over here. So I would go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and click Export. So this is going to create the loadout definition that I've just made. And then if I were to come in here and template under Import Loadout Definitions, and I'll go over importing a little bit more later, I can do Demo, and I'll see the one that I just created right here. A couple things to show here in the Import Loadout Definition screen. If you own the loadout definition and you want to update some of the settings that you had earlier without necessarily going and re-exporting it, you can click the edit button here on the left-hand side. You can change the name and the category of the loadout definitions. You can also click on the share tab and change the share settings of the loadout definition. Every time you update a loadout definition and you either export it or change the settings here, the version of the loadout definition will increase. And we keep track of that, and we keep track of the loadout definition for people who import your loadout definition. So if they imported version 2 and then you come through and make some changes to it, upgrade it to version 3, we can then notify the user that their version has increased. Another key part to realize is that the loadouts and the loadout definition saving are separate. When you're just coming here and working on a loadout through the unit screen and you're making all these settings and you click on File, Save As, that is saving a loadout. That's not saving and exporting your loadout definition. It will save all the loadout definition settings that you have within your loadout. So your loadout has its kind of own copy of a loadout definition that it saves, but it will not export it to the shared library that you may be sharing with your guild or you're sharing with your alliance. The only time that gets saved and updated is when you come back here to template and go export loadout definitions. So keep in mind, if you're building a squad or you're building a full roster baseline loadout definition, you go through, you make your changes and you save it here. That's for you by yourself. That's in your loadout. If you want to share it, if you want to make it permanent, you want to export your loadout definition, that's in the loadout definition library. There's one other way that we added to update your loadout definition rather than going through the template export screen, and that is directly through the unit screen. In order to show that, let me show you how to create a specific loadout definition for a couple of units. And we'll take Ray Jedi Training as our example, because she can be modded different ways depending on how you use her. If you use her under a Galactic Legend Ray lead, you might give her pure health. If you use her under a lead herself, you might give her more speed and offense. So let's go ahead and create a loadout definition for her as a lead and show you how you can export just that without going through the template screen. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll filter by resistance. Here's my Ray Jedi Trading. I'm going to click that edit button. Then I'm going to go into my primaries. For the primaries, I want her to be more offense oriented. So I'm going to select an offense cross, a crit damage triangle, and then a speed arrow. And for sets, I want her to either use a speed or crit damage set. And for the offset, I want her to use either health or potency. So those are the settings that I want to use for my Ray Jedi Training if she is a lead herself. Now, the other way you can export this is by clicking on the search definitions, and I'll get into what search definitions are a little bit later when I talk about importing. But after you click that button, you'll now have a button to export the definition. And I can click here and say, give the definition a name. I'll give it Ray Jedi Training lead. That'll be my definition name. I'll go ahead and click OK. And then I'll click OK. And now if I go to template import and search Ray Jedi Training, you'll see the Ray Jedi Training lead template definition is exported and in this library right here. Now, how does that work if you want to do more than one unit? Pretty simple. Let's say I'm building the Ray Jedi Training lead squad. I want to use Scavray. In that squad, I'll go ahead and click her edit button. For sets, I'll do, let's say I always want to do crit damage and then crit chance or health as the offset. In the primaries, I always want to do offense, crit damage, and speed for her. Now, I can export this loadout definition and add it to the one that I created by clicking Export Loadout Definition, Ray Jedi Training Lead. I'll go ahead and click OK. And what that will do is it will add Scavray to the Ray Jedi Training Loadout definition. So I'll go ahead and click OK. I'll go to Template here, and I'll go ahead and search. And now you see both units are in here right now. So I've added that. This is a view where, if you have a big loadout definition that you're editing, you're making small tweaks, you can, quickly export it without having to go into your loadout definition and do it all at once. If you're going to be spending a lot of time, it might be easier just to make all your changes at once and then go into template and export everything one time. But if you're just tweaking one or two units, you might like that ability to export the definition. So let's show another thing. Let's show how the loadout and the loadout definition can get separated. So I've made these two settings and I've exported my loadout definition. Let's save this as, let's change her modding because she doesn't have the correct modding. I'll go ahead and I'll pick for her triangle, I'll pick crit damage. For her cross, I'll pick offense. Go ahead and lock that. She needs, didn't have this right. I think she still needs to have a speed set, so go ahead and do that. And now she's no longer red. She completes the speed set, and she has the correct primaries assigned to her. So this is a loadout definition, and it has, it meets the loadout definition for Ray Jedi Training that we created, and it now has my specific modding to it. So I can go ahead and save this. And I'm going to call this demo Jedi Training Ray and save that. And now if I go into loadouts, I have demo Jedi Training Ray right here. Now if I come in here and click edit, you can see, we can look at Ray Jedi Training, and you can see that the primaries and sets are still saved. I'm going to actually reload the entire page to demonstrate this to you guys, how it's persisted. log back in again, and go to Loadouts. It's a brand new session, everything's new. I click Edit, and I go into Ray Jedi Training. You see that the primaries and sets are still retained because they are part of my loadout definition. Now, let's say I make some updates to this. Let's say I go ahead and I want to also accept a offense triangle on her. So that's a new setting. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to search definitions, and I'm going to export my definition now because I've made a single update. I've tweaked it. Go ahead. I'll use the same name. I'll go ahead and click OK. And let's go in our template and go into import definitions, Ray Jedi Training Lead, and you'll see that the version has increased to 3. Now, I exported the loadout definition, but I did not save my loadout. So my loadout definition got saved, but my loadout has not been updated. Let's see how that changes the behavior. So I jump back into my loadouts. I still have my demo Jedi Training Ray. I go ahead and click Edit. And now I click on Ray Jedi Training. And I look at the primaries, and offense is not selected. And that's because the loadout definition is saved separately from the loadout. I am going to show you how to update and keep those in sync. But right now, my loadout has version 2 of the loadout definition. And my loadout definition is up to version 3, so they're out of sync. When I talk about importing in a second, we'll talk about how to manage that, how to keep them separately. But this is a good way to kind of quickly edit loadout definitions without having to export them. So let's say you've created a really great loadout definition for a squad, or maybe for your entire roster, and you want to share it with someone. You've shared it, and now how do they import it? How do they use the loadout definition that you've created? There's actually a couple different ways to get that loadout definition into your modding session. So let's go ahead and jump into that and show you how to do that now. So here I am. I'm on the main screen, and I want to find a loadout definition and bring those settings into my modding session. I would go ahead and click Template here, and then I would go to the Import Loadout Definitions tab, and I get a list of all of the loadout definitions that are available for me to pull into my modding session. So remember I talked in one of the previous sections about squad definitions versus full roster baseline definitions. A squad definition will show you the units here in the row for the description of the loadout definition. But a full baseline definition will not. A full baseline definition will just give you the details right here. So you can pull in a full baseline. One of the ones that I create and maintain is called Strange's Meta, and that's or let me search for here it is, Strange's Meta, and you can go ahead and just click the load button. And one of the things Strange's Meta has is that it has the stat weights that we use, but then it adds the set and primary restrictions to all your units. So I can go ahead and click load, and that will bring in, and you'll start to see a bunch of red because Strange's Meta has primary restrictions, and it also has set restrictions as well that the units must use. So you'll see there. So I'll go ahead and reset my settings. I'll go into the template again, but let's this time try to import a single squad definition. There's filters here. You can search by the search input text. You can filter by author. Let's take one that Fatal's created. Let's see, I want a 5v5 one, and let's see, he's got a Bad Batch Anti-General Grievous. So let's say I want to mod my Bad Batch units like Fatal has created his loadout definition for here. He says 100's a bit expensive, but it's got a full turn meter train there. So let's say I want to add that one. I also want to add this Bounty Hunter one. I want to add both of these. If you go up here, you can select whether or not you want to import the unit priority order. and you can also exclude the units not imported. If I'm building a full roster baseline, I don't want this. I just want to import the units and override their settings. I don't want to exclude units that I'm not importing. If I'm doing something like a LSTB import, I might want to use this option because I'm only, importing one squad and creating a loadout definition for one squad. But if I just want to add a single loadout definition to my full baseline, I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this one. Let's say I also don't want to change the priority order that I have in my session 2. I like my priority order. I just want to pull in the stats. And I also want to be able to load multiple loadout definitions at once. I'll click load multiple. So I like this Bad Bash one. I'm going to go ahead and click add. I like this Bounty Hunter one. I'm going to click add here too. Now, we talked before about optional units and about required units. These optional units get a special icon here where they're defined as flex. So your core team is going to be these units, and then you have a flex unit that you can select here. And I can choose whether or not to import that flex unit by clicking on the icon or unclicking on the icon here. So let's say I want to import the Aura Sing settings, but I don't want to import the Moff Gideon settings because I don't have Moff Gideon geared up. I don't want to use him. I would uncheck him here. So now I'm going to pull these two loadout definitions into my working session. Everything looks good. I'll come down here. I'll click import. And now you start to see colors on the units that were pulled in with Fatal's loadout definitions that we used. I can filter by bounty hunters, for instance, and click on this. You'll see Fatal has some stat targets for them, some crit chance and speed. He has some advanced settings here where the speed actually has a range of 1 speed. He's got the primary set for it and the set. And, Fatal's done all the work to make sure that the turn order for these units is absolutely perfect so that they're very specific and that you get your payout and then you get your Mandalorian Annihilate so you can import it that way. So that's kind of the first way to import a loadout definition. The other way to pull a loadout definition into your working session, if you want to do it one unit at a time, is I'm going to go ahead and reset all settings. I'll show you the other way to do it. Is to click on a unit that you're modding, and then here in the loadout sheet, you can click search definitions. And what this is going to do is it's going to look through all the definitions that are available to you, either shared to you through global loadout definitions or from your guild. And in the drop-down list, it's going to show you all loadout definitions where BOSC is defined. So let's see if we can find that one. This is the one that we imported before. So if you don't like the other screen going into that and importing the loadout definition, you can just select this right here, and it will import BOSC's setting into your current session. You'll have to save this if you want to use it, but you can pull in loadout definitions this way. Now, the drawback to doing it this way is that you're only bringing in BOSC, and that oftentimes loadout definitions will involve relative targets. You want BOSC to be faster than this unit or slower than this unit. You want him to have higher health than this unit. And when you're doing it one at a time, you might miss a unit. So when you save the definition, we actually will have a pop-up that shows up that says, note, you have loaded a definition that's part of a squad, but some member of the squads are not using this definition. Do you want to pull in the loadout definition for other units? So let's say here, I want to do what I did before. I'll say Boba Fett, Grief, Django, and Aura. Actually, let's take Mandalorian here. Let's go with these 5 units. I'll go ahead and click OK. All right. And then those 5 units will have their loadout definition pulled in that way. So some people like that a lot more. It seems to be more intuitive to find specific loadout definitions for individual units. This search capability also allows you to export a loadout definition directly if you want to, but that's two ways to pull in loadout definitions that other people have made into your session and use them that way. So importing and managing loadout definitions on all of your units is probably one of the areas that I feel could use the most improvement in the tool. It's not the easiest to pull in loadout definitions from the library and keep them up to date. So this is one area that I think we're going to make improvements on over time, but let's go ahead and show you what tools that we have available. Earlier in one of the demos, we created a template definition called Ray Jedi Training Lead. And when we saved our loadout, the version that we saved in the loadout was, I think, version 2 or version 3. And we've made some updates to that. Maybe you make updates to the loadout definition. Maybe the person who's sharing it with you makes updates to the loadout definition. And the version gets updated, but your loadout is pointing to an older version. And you want some way to keep your loadout up to date. And we have some tools to sync that. So let's show how. I'd go in, I'd look into my managed demo loadout that I created. And the Ray Jedi training here is on version 3, but the newer version is on version 4. So there's a couple ways to see and upgrade that. The first one is the search definitions. And it is going to default to the loadout definition that I selected for this unit. We're tracking that now. We didn't used to track what loadout definition we pulled in for that unit. So we do get that. And we're also tracking the version that we used to create that loadout definition. So I'm tracking that I used version 3, and I know in the library there's a version 4. So I know that there is an update for me. And the get latest version will allow me to sync with the latest version. For this demo, I had to do some work between cuts of the video. So what I did was I tweaked the health down to 20 in the latest version. So if you see right here, the version that I have, which is version 3, has 21 health. If I get the latest, I have version 20 health. So it has, now it's the latest version. I still need to save definition because this is working. If I go ahead and save definition, and then I click OK, and then I do File, Save, and I save this. Now I'm up to date with the latest version of the loadout definition for the Ray Jedi training team. So one of the baseline loadout definitions that some people use is called Strange as Meta. It's one that I try to keep up to date and refresh about every month by reverse engineering the stat weights and the set and primary restrictions of some of the meta guilds and players in the game. Those top players. The stat weights you'll see if you come into Playground are the stat weights by default, but if you look at the primaries and set restrictions, there aren't any by default. If you want to pull those in and start working on your loadout definition, you can just come in here and search meta, and you can load Strange as Meta. But you'll find very quickly that they're very restrictive. Those players that are at the top end of the game have incredible mod depth and are able to use every single squad in the game and use units that you might not be able to. So you'll probably end up tweaking the settings a little bit. And the problem a lot of people run into is they'll start with Strange as Meta, they'll make a bunch of updates, they'll add things to it, and then a new Strange as Meta will come out the next month, and well, they want to sync most of those units, but they don't want to sync the units that they've updated, or they don't want to sync, they don't want to wipe out all the changes and the specific tweaks that they've made for those units. So what we introduced a release or two ago is tracking on a per unit basis. And we also track the modified status of each unit. So let's go ahead and use a loadout that we were using in a couple of the other examples. And that's the Ray Jedi training example. And if I search definitions and this is the loadout definition that I'm attaching to Ray Jedi Training. And if I tweak this by coming in and changing one of the parameters, let's say I want to accept crit chance, and go ahead and click OK, the tool now knows that yes, this is coming from Ray Jedi Training, but I've modified it from the loadout definition that is in the system. Now, if I want to do an update, let's say a new baseline, a new Strange's meta comes out, or whoever I'm consuming my baseline loadout definition from releases a new version, I can come into Manage Definitions, and then I can sort by the target definition that they're coming from, and see that the Ray Jedi Training has been modified. And by default, I'm not going to change that when I do an update. Since Ray Scavenger was not modified, I am going to grab the latest version of that. And I can just go ahead and click OK, and the tool is going to grab the newest version of all the loadout definitions that are available. This is also a really good way to see at a high level what each of your units, what loadout definition they came from, and to be able to change quickly. You can hit this drop down, you can see every single loadout definition that Ayla Secura is in, and you can change that. And then when you click the OK button, it's going to sync her up with that. One thing to note is that if you end up picking, let's say, Asajj, and you end up picking this Night Sister loadout definition, you're responsible for making sure that, you know, everybody else in the squad matches that target definition, because oftentimes loadout definitions are built for squad, not just a specific unit. And this screen doesn't have those dependency checks in place. So it is good to get a very high level overview and to upgrade to the latest version, or if you want to fall back to the HotUtils default or Strange's meta, you can do that very quickly. There's also some filters right here, and when you hit the OK button, that's what's going to trigger an update and a resync. I realize that this is probably not the best system to kind of manage loadout definitions for units, so it's probably something that'll continually improve upon, but it is a pretty good way to see where every unit is. Some of the older loader definitions that you may have made prior to this upgrade when we started tracking aren't going to have this data in it, so you might have to create a new loadout definition from scratch, but we are tracking it from now on, and you will be able to see, you know, when you modify things or when there is a new version that you pulled in from. There might be a few tools that you're used to working with, and we offer ways to convert your previously existing modding rules into Playground. So let's talk about that real quickly, because that can be useful if you're coming over from another tool or another modding method. Those are in the Templates tab, and the last two tabs here are from Grand Ivory and Import Template. Grand Ivory, if you have a session in Grand Ivory and export, I see some people sometimes click the save button. The file that's needed is the export. You can select which template you want to export, and then or export all, and that creates a JSON file. And then when you come into the Playground tool, you can choose the file here. Let me see if I can find one. I know I have a couple. And in the drop down, you can then select which template you want to import, and then click the import button, and that's pulled into the tool. For the most part, I think it's pretty accurate, and the conversion does a pretty good job. The other avenue is the compliance templates. So those are things that people are very used to running through the bot. I know we have a CAM one that's very popular, but sometimes guild leaders will create ones for territory wars that have modding requirements in them. And we've done our best to do a conversion from the compliance template into what would be a loadout definition in Playground. There are a couple of areas where it doesn't convert perfectly, but let's go ahead and show how you would import that. You go into import definition, and let's say, for instance, 50 cam you wanted to import. You can go ahead and click the import button, and then the tool will do its best to convert the compliant requirements into loadout definition requirements. It doesn't have stat weights; those aren't in the compliance definitions, but it does have a lot of the stat requirements. And if you want to take a look at that, you can go ahead and go into the template requirements summary, and you can see that a lot of this stuff gets converted in pretty well. I wouldn't say that this is a perfect conversion. There are a couple of things that the compliance templates can do that Playground handles a little differently. For instance, the compliance template, you can do something has to be greater, can be greater than another number. In Playground, everything's either greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. So Playground will add a 1 to it in order to kind of convert it, and that's not always exactly what you're looking for. So it's better used as a starting point conversion, and then spot check it and see if anything doesn't line up. The second area is if the compliance template has different strategies for modding units, and they have either or. I think there's, like, for instance, a fast echo or a slow echo, and those stat requirements may not be compatible at the same time. So if I look at this, is that my fast echo requirements come in, but also my slow echo requirements come in, and you're never able to hit both requirements at the same time. So you would have to go in and tweak that. How would I do that? I just go ahead and come in here. I go into advanced, required stat targets, and I'd find the one that I wanted. Let's say I wanted the fast echo. So I probably delete this one, and I delete this one, and I delete maybe this one, and I'd leave, you know, this the requirement for speed and damage here, and I might, and that might be good. I can go ahead and click OK, and that's a good way to import a territory war or you know, compliance template that you want to use in Playground. My suggestion is, if you have a guild who heavily uses compliance templates for non-HotUtils members, you know, continue to do that, and just see if you can get one guild member to maybe take that compliance template and convert it into a good loadout definition, spot check it, and when everything looks good, then export that loadout definition into the loadout definition library and share it with the guild or alliance. So I think it's always a good practice to end a video presentation with an actual example of how to create a loadout definition. So what we're going to do here is we're going to wrap everything up, and we're going to show kind of creating a loadout definition from start to scratch. Not going to really cover anything new in this, but it's going to be a practical example, and it's going to show how you guys might use it to give you full context, because we want to put all the pieces together. So there's some really great YouTubers that I think, and content creators that you guys may have heard of, called the Gambit Podcast. It's a group of maybe 6 or 7 guys who make really good videos, and I highly encourage you all to watch their content. They have great GAC streams, and occasionally they'll have videos explaining different teams and breakdowns. And one of the YouTubers that, or content creators that I like to watch is a guy named Calvin Awesome. And he created a video not too long ago called No GL No Problem, Jedi Knight Revan, Jedi Knight Luke versus SLKR. And I really liked this video because it showed how to use this team comp against SLKR. And one of his slides actually gives modding guidelines. And to all the other content creators, if any of you guys, for any really weird reason, are watching my video, I like this format because I can just hit pause on a frame and kind of try to recreate that in HotUtils and when I'm modding. And when it's a video that talks about all the stat specifications, and I have to, you know, watch the video over while I'm doing my modding. Sometimes it takes a while to jump back and forth. So I'm going to use this as an example because I think it's a great practical example. And we're going to try to create a loadout definition to match the modding that Calvin suggests in his video here. So let's jump into the tool, and the first thing you want to do is select the units that you want to include in your loadout definition. So I'll start by removing everything, and then it's easier to remove everything and then add back in the units that you want to include. So come in here, and I'm going to filter by Jedi, and I'm going to find the 5 units that I want to include. So I'm going to do Jedi Knight Luke, Jedi Knight Revan, we'll do Hermit Yoda, Old Ben, and Bastila. So now that I have the 5 units that are part of my loadout definition selected, I can filter to only show included here, and we're going to work with this. And let's get to work on the stats. The first unit we will do is Jedi Knight Revan, so I'm going to go ahead and click the edit button. I'm going to go to stat targets, and I'm going to create a new stat tier. We'll call this stat tier B, because we'll create one more that's a little higher than this, but I'll do B. According to Calvin, we want the speed to be 300, so I'll put here 300 base speed, and then I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, another thing we want to do is we are going to set the specific speed targets of every single unit, but we do want to get a specific turn order, and we want Jedi Knight Revan to go first before everyone else. So I am going to go into advanced, and even though we have the speed set, I'm going to set relative stat targets here and make him faster than everybody else. So I'm going to make sure he's faster than Hermit Yoda here. I'll actually do Jedi Knight Revan's speed is greater than Hermit Yoda's speed +1, so that ensures that he's faster than Hermit Yoda, and I'm going to do that for everybody. And then I'm going to do, I'm going to search for Old Ben Kenobi, and make him 1 speed faster than this. And then I'm going to do Bastila, and I'm going to make sure he's 1 speed faster than her. And then finally, I'm going to select Jedi Knight Luke, make sure he's 1. Now, you may think this is unnecessary because these units have very slow base speed, but it is still good to put the rules in here to ensure the turn order gets set correctly. I'll go ahead and save definition. Search definitions. Okay, that's okay. Go ahead and save that. We'll go ahead and go back. Let's take a quick look at the weights, and I'll go to the go back into advanced for that. And I like the primary view a little bit better. Let's see how he pans out. He's got default speed, crit chance, crit damage. I think I'm going to change that a little bit. I'm going to zero this out. I know he's going to want a lot of speed, but let's also give him some health, protection, a little bit of physical damage. I am not a theory crafter here, but I mean, this looks a little bit better. I don't think he needs a ton of anything else. Maybe crit damage would be nice, but I think that's probably pretty good for him. Go ahead and hit this. All right, let's move on to the next unit. The next unit is going to be Hermit Yoda. Go ahead and click here. I'm going to do stat targets, crit tier, make this tier B. Okay. For him, I'm going to make his speed to be 300. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's look at his weight. Going to advanced. Going to weight. All right, he's got a lot of speed, a lot of defense, health protection. He definitely doesn't need any crit chance, so let's zero that out. potency and tenacity. I don't think he needs potency, so I'm going to zero that out. Everything else looks pretty good. He definitely doesn't need any damage. So I guess that looks okay. I am going to have a second part to creating loadout definitions in the automation section when we talk about best practices, so that your loadout definitions that you share produce the best results. But here I just want to kind of show start to end. And if I go, I didn't select required for that one, so okay, we'll do him. All right, the next one is old Ben. Go ahead and do him. Create a new stat tier. We're going to call this one B2. And then we're going to make his speed be 270. Save that. Go into advanced. Let's take a look at his weights. Speed, protection, crit chance. I don't think he needs this. Crit damage, potency. He does need potency because he has to land his ability block. So that looks pretty good. I don't think he needs any physical damage. But this looks like a fine breakdown. So we'll go ahead and save that. And then we'll go ahead, make this required. Go ahead and do Bacilla. We're going to do stat target, call this B. Okay, it's required. Her speed is going to also be 270. Let's go ahead and save that. Go to advanced. All right, so she's got a little bit of everything. Crit chance, I don't think she really needs much crit chance. So I'm gonna put this, I'm gonna set it to 0. I don't think she's the damage dealer. Crit damage, I don't think she's the damage dealer here. Potency she is gonna need. She's gonna need to land ability blocks. And the rest looks okay here. So we'll go ahead and put this. And then finally, we're gonna do Giant Luke. Let's do stat targets, we'll do B. We're going to make his speed be 220. That's what Calvin had. And we're going to make him have 10k offense. So we'll do physical damage, 10,000. Should get the right number of zeros. Required. Calvin also said that he wanted to make sure he had crit damage. So I'll go to primaries, make sure that he has a crit damage set. Go ahead and save that. And then let's go ahead and look at advanced. Let's look at our weights here. Crit damage is high. Speed is decently high. Crit chance. This looks okay to me. So I think I'll go ahead and keep those. So one more thing we're going to add is we do want Bacilla to go before Old Ben so that she can put Battle Meditation on Old Ben. He can land his ability blocks. I reached out to Calvin about that, and he helped me understand the turn order a little bit better. So I'm going to go required stat targets here. I'm going to do Bacilla on, and I'm going to do, for the compare, I'll do Old Ben Kenobi, and I'll make the speed so she is faster than him. Okay, so for all of these, we created tier Bs, which are going to be kind of your base tier that you use for all of these units. But you may want to go ahead and add some additional requirements for units to, for people who have better modding. So let's do that for Old Ben and Bacilla. I know they want a decent amount of potency because they need to land their ability blocks. So although Bacilla does give battle meditation, but let's go ahead and put another requirement just to show how it's done. Let's say create a new tier. I'm going to call this tier A. I'm going to add 270 here, but under potency, I'm also going to add a requirement for 35. I don't think that's particularly high, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I think for Old Ben, we're going to create an A tier for this, and we're going to do 270 for speed. And for his potency, I think he has a higher base potency, so I'm going to put 75. So this takes some understanding and learning the different stats and everything. And to be honest with you, this is not my strong point. But I think this looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and go into review or template and into requirement summary. And we get a summary here of the stats that everybody requires. We see Skywalker needs a crit damage triangle. He needs 220 speed and 10k physical damage. Jedi Knight Revan needs to be faster than the other 3 members of the team and 300 speed. This looks okay to me. Everything is looking good. And go ahead. And so now I have the video. I've created my stat targets the way I look. This is now a loadout definition in a team that I come across. I want to save it to my library. I want to be able to have access to it later and remember it. And I think one of the nice things about Playground is it allows you to capture this information, put it in your library, and grab it later. Whereas I see a lot of this great content, this YouTube content, and I think, oh, this is a great team. I want to create that and remember it and be able to kind of recreate that team later, but I can't find the video. So we'll go template. We'll do export loadout definition. I'm going to create a loadout definition, and I'll say Jedi Knight Revan, Jedi Knight Luke, and I'll call it maybe counter SLKR. In my category, I'll select 5v5 because it's 5v5. And in description, I'll say Jedi Knight Revan squad to counter SLKR. In the YouTube ID, I'm going to grab this part of the YouTube ID right here, put that here. If I were wanting to share it with people, I would select the guilds and alliances I want to share with. I am going to come back to this loadout definition in the automation section and talk about different best practices. But for now, I'll just go ahead and click export. And now if I go into my library of import definitions and I search for Jedi Knight Revan, I now have Strange's Jedi Knight Revan, Jedi Knight Luke counter to SLKR. What I should have done is, well, I have a link here. I should have probably put something in the description about this being Calvin's. I'll edit that later. But if I click on this link right here, it's going to open Calvin's video, and I can rewatch the content that I have here. And now I have this saved, and I can share it with people. And let's go ahead and show how I can be a consumer of this loadout definition. Let's say I'm in a guild with somebody who created a loadout definition. They said, I have this great squad. I built a loadout definition. I shared it with you and the alliance. You should try it out. Or let's say that I created the loadout definition, and now I kind of want to incorporate it into my existing baseline, my existing loadout. So I'll find my baseline that I use, and I'll go ahead and click edit. Either that or I could start a completely new playground session. Either one works. And now I would want to import this loadout definition into it. So I find one of the units, I go ahead and click on this and click search definitions here. And now I'd look for that loadout definition that was shared with me. Oh, here it is right here. I'll go ahead and click it. And now I'll see that the stat targets got imported, and the relative stat targets are also imported. Everything looks good to go. I'll go ahead and save the definition, and I get a warning here that says, hey, there's some other people in this loadout definition. Do you want to import them too? I'll go ahead and click OK, because I definitely do. Okay, and then click OK here. Close this, and let's just take a look. Make sure those settings got included. Filter by Jedi. Let's take a look at Hermit Yoda. Does he have my stat targets? Yes, he's in there. So now my loadout that I'm working, my baseline, has all of these requirements in it. If any of the units are failing the requirements, they'll show up as red. I can go ahead and click right here, for instance. My Oben isn't fast enough, so I need to improve him to get him to work with this counter properly. It also will show up as his current loadout definition that's assigned to him. So there's one way to get the loadout definition through here. The other way, also, just before I change screens, you can click the About button. You get a little bit of a summary about the loadout definition that's assigned to this guy. You can click stat summary, and you'll get a summary of the loadout definition there. I'll go ahead and click OK. and then the other way that I can import this loadout definition is to go to template, import loadout definitions. I can search for it here, and then I don't want to exclude units, and I want to import. I don't want to import, so I'd probably go with these options. I'm probably going to change the default of these to make it, but these are the settings that will add a loadout definition that you select to the existing, and I just go ahead and click load, and that gets loaded in the same way that the other one did. So hope you guys found this video useful. If you're still watching it after this length of time, props to you. The next video, we're going to go over automation, how the automation algorithm works, how you can optimize it and make the best use of it, and how you can create loadout definitions that work best under the automation tools.